just like when I did my verses between Splinter Cell and Metal Gear, there are just more and more things to think about that kept coming to mind, and one thing was the basics of stealth. And recently I've been playing a bunch of the Metal Gears. They all have upsides and downsides, they have different things that beat one another. There's a reason why both Splinter Cell and Metal Gear were up against each other for the longest time as competition to one another. Shut your faces. I'm kind of sick of hearing these jerks talking, so I kind of want to take care of some things. So I just did these two.
This engineer. Let's get moving.
But I wanted to talk about different things regarding playing some of the older Metal Gears. One of the things I realize is that for both Splinter Cell and Metal Gear, they have very different, like, kind of puzzle ideas of how you go about solving that puzzle of stealth and how you get past. And I wish there was a way to shut their dialogue up. But there's different ways of finding past a lot of these stealth sections of each game, how they play out. There's both restrictions but also freedom to different ways you can play them. So I notice with both the stealth and the gadgets that Metal Gear gives you. So Metal Gear can sometimes give you the gadgets that are required. Splinter Cell also does the same thing. Like in Chaos Theory, where you launch with specific gadget loadout. Where later Splinter Cells started to make you earn the rest of your gear and gadgets, which Metal Gear also did later on with like the Phantom Pain and such, so they had a very similar evolution. You could also argue that Splinter Cell, the developers for Splinter Cell gave up, where Metal Gear continued to go on until it pretty much died off with the loss of Hideo Kojima working at the studio. But I think it was more they didn't know where to go with it, and that Splinter Cell has largely lived up to such a high, almost Half-Life 3 standard of like how people are hyping it up, that it's hard for them to find a way. And it's not like Splinter Cell's gone. They're making a TV show, they have a VR game they talked about, and possibly a mainline game finally, and they've had tons of content for their other games. But when it comes to Metal Gear, some of the key aspects you want are to blend in sound, condense your sound stuff, like sneak around and such, without being seen. And, well, don't get caught. Those two elements, though, are very important. Playing Metal Gear, I realized that in the original ones, you can put yourself in like a little crevice and just like put yourself up against the wall, and an enemy will walk past, which leads to the next part, is the peripheral vision and the believability of the characters. When a character walks past that, especially in bright lit hallways and such, they should be able to see you, but they don't. Also, he's not blending in, and he can't really crouch, only when he stays still in his prone stance or up against something. Otherwise, there's only two settings: run around or walk slowly, depending on how you move the thumbstick or whatever, or go prone. Okay.
We gonna listen in or what? Nomad, deploy your drone.
I'm on it.
Shut up. But when it comes to it, they break a couple of the rules. And while Metal Gear is meant to be kind of your 80s action heroes, and even in Metal Gear Solid 5, you can, as long as you're not standing up or you're not on a harder difficulty, you can just basically crouch walk as fast as you want up to a dude and knock him out. There's not really a sound meter. There's not something, the enemies don't interact to your sound all the time, depending on unless you purposely make a sound, like shoot out a light. I'll get to stuff like that in a sec. The characters, even in the older games, react realistically to what's going on around them. And with the lighting, while there's a lot of nitpicky things with Splinter Cell, like how could a guy not see Sam Fisher crouching around with those goggles, even though those goggles are only lit up to the player, not to the characters in-game. That is a perspective thing, so you can see the character, and I think even Blacklist takes a great advantage of this. Like when it's storming out, your gear will get all messy and stuff. So they take advantage of everything in the newer Splinter Cells, and they definitely implement everything they can. I think the story, though, and sadly Sam Fisher's character suffers greatly in Blacklist. And both games replaced their last actor. Like, David Hayter was definitely not someone you wanted to replace for the fans. Kiefer Sutherland's awesome, and I love him, but that's not something I'm sure the fans really liked. And going forward, you know that Konami's not going to give Metal Gear the respect it deserves, sadly. Somebody else might, but you know Konami won't, because they're a bunch of scumbags. And look how they treated Metal Gear before with Metal Gear Survive and turning into a zombie game, and then pachinko machines and crap. And with that, there's Splinter Cell holds to the key elements better than Metal Gear, even before Metal Gear truly implemented them. You can still do stuff like go invisible, and there's Metal Gear Solid 3 where you use different outfits to blend in or hide prone in the grass and stuff. But other than that, that one little crevice where you have your back up against in a lit hall, guy walks past you, apparently doesn't see you in his peripheral vision. Even though you're in this light blue suit, it's like tight suit, and you should be able to be seen. He doesn't see you, and guess what? You can pop out of that cover and just run down the other side of the hallway, and it's a quiet goddamn hallway, and he still can't hear you. So they break the rule. Like, when you think of stealth, when you're sneaking around, you think of, you want to be quiet. You want to blend in. You don't want somebody to see you. And Metal Gear kind of breaks those rules. That's another thing that I would contribute to my Metal Gear versus Splinter Cell, is I think Splinter Cell holds to those rules better, and especially due to how the enemies and characters around you interact, it feels more believable. There are also civilians in the middle of missions and stuff in the crossfire, so you want to be careful there too. Where Metal Gear, like Metal Gear Solid 5, where are the civilians? Where are, other than being kept hostage, which become soldiers later, where are these lively cities in Crud? Where's all the people? There's nobody other than these stations with soldiers. It doesn't feel quite as lively, even with animals around. It doesn't feel quite as alive. Another thing is Splinter Cell. How many games do you see in a third-person crouching shooter type of game where you're stealthing around as crouching, pressing yourself up against cover like you're seeing with Ghost Recon? You see that with You see that with stuff like Ghost of Tsushima. You see that with pretty much every Ubisoft game you can think of. Assassin's Creed, Ghost Recon. Even if it's in first person, you see that kind of stuff. Even Metal Gear Solid 5 has taken up that, and you can shoot lights out in 5, which is what was established with Splinter Cell way before. So, and even in these other games like Ghost Recon, you can shoot out lights as a form of trying to blend in stealth. I think there's a lot more taken from Splinter Cell than Metal Gear. Metal Gear's gameplay mechanics don't age quite as well. Who shoots with X anymore? Who has that type of camera angle? And the camera angle was meant to create a more cinematic appeal to the game, but I don't feel like it fits where in Resident Evil and Silent Hill it does. The reason Resident Evil and Silent Hill have that camera angle is because they were meant to instill fear. It was a way of making the character feel vulnerable, the player feel vulnerable, and the characters are vulnerable, which is another problem with how the camera angles are in Metal Gear. due to the fact that in Silent Hill you play a protagonist that has no idea how to use a weapon, and you truly feel that through the gameplay and the angles that it takes. And in Resident Evil, while your guy does know how to use a weapon, he's a rookie cop. He is put in an entirely unknown, different environment that he's never been involved with zombies and mutated creatures. So there's a lot more to that. Snake is not your typical guy who doesn't know how to use a weapon. He knows how to use a weapon, he's trained for this kind of stuff, and yet they limit him in the gameplay. And then the other thing I was thinking of is the limitation of the time. That's definitely a factor to the argument. But then you implement, I think this is more of a design choice from Hideo Kojima or whoever at Konami at the time, and at his workplace. I think it's more a design choice on purpose for that reason, because then you have games like Scython Filter, and you got games like Thief, Deus Ex, Hitman that implement game styles that we still see today. Even Hitman still has its same gameplay style. You can crouch around, sneak up behind people, and knock them out or kill them. But you see that more often, and while I won't say Splinter Cell is the grandfather of that, I think it's kind of like how Half-Life or Halo or even Gears for third-person shooters have really elevated those type of games to the next point. And we get to see that stuff more often.
You got a tango with multiple civilians around.
How do I zoom in?
Carenya, I'm safe. I'm safe.
There we go.
Look, it doesn't matter.
But yeah, a lot of games implement what Splinter Cell does, even Metal Gear. That and Splinter Cell's more of your slow, methodical kind of third-person shooter, where something like Gears of War is more fast-paced and action. And Splinter Cell takes up action too, but so does Metal Gear. In parts. There are a lot of forced sections in both game series where you're forced to do action.
I have to go. I'll call you as soon as I can.
You don't always have the equipment you need for Metal Gear.
Don't you ever read the news?
Hold up. He's making another call.
It's me. I'm at the safe house.
We need to meet now.
I know a place, a farm. I'll send you the coordinates.
Get there fast.
But
and make sure no one follows you.
He was talking to Bowman.
What does the CIA want with Skeltech in Bolivia?
I'm not sure. It's worth checking out.
This shit sounds above our pay grade, Nomad.
I know. The Walker's got me thinking we can't let go. The Walker, this is Nomad. We overheard a conversation between Bowman and the engineer. They're meeting up in person at a farmhouse.
But the key, I think that this is another thing that will contribute to the Metal Gear Solid versus, and I've watched a lot of videos on like both series too, university videos. Once again, I think either of the series, I think Metal Gear is, it's hard to say, like, I think Metal Gear is maybe more successful than Splinter Cell. I don't know, it's hard to say. They're really kind of even when I think about it, because every time I see a Splinter Cell game, it does really good. Even the bad don't like as much. Or Blacklist. Those are still really good, and some of them are even still praised today, similar to Metal Gear. Metal Gear has had games that have done really well, all of them, but have also gotten some hate at that time in a similar fashion, like Metal Gear Solid 2. People didn't like that originally. It's liked a lot more now. So I think they go through a very similar like evolution of their series. And
We're on site. Stay
they're
sharp. Start
very
digging for intel.
they're tied in that regard. I do think that in terms of, like, you know, the death battle with Sam Fisher and Snake, I do think Snake would win, definitely, because he's a super soldier, and Sam's just a regular guy with military training in regards to his tactical espionage as a Splinter Cell. Driving in this game's garbage, by the way. But both series have strength, like an even amount of strengths and weaknesses to one another, and it's hard to say which one's better. That's why the debate still goes today between Metal Gear and Splinter Cell. It's similar to Silent Hill and Resident Evil. They were a competing series, and they're going to be 9X versus. It's really hard to say who's better than the other. They always come back with a really strong game. There was Metal Gear Solid, and Metal Gear Solid was like the only game, other than like Siphon Filter and such, that really stood out to people.
Ready to fire.
And when it came to... Who the hell is seeing me? When it came to it, then Splinter Cell came out. Metal Gear had competition, finally. And it's funny because there was already technically competition for Metal Gear, but nothing still, like, rose above Metal Gear until Splinter Cell came along. Splinter Cell was its competition. And that is an honor enough for Splinter Cell. I think that's a pretty risky but also cool thing to think that Splinter Cell is the competition to keep Metal Gear being better, and Metal Gear is the competition for Splinter Cell to keep going and becoming better, to evolve. And competition's good. When it comes to how they evolve over time, you have Pandora tomorrow. If you think about it, Chaos Theory would have technically been the second game if they didn't have somebody working on another Splinter Cell. That would be a crazy leap in how different each game was, but I'm glad Pandora is there, so you can truly feel the difference between, in a good way, between Chaos Theory and Pandora. It doesn't feel like it's badly paced. And then we had Metal Gear Solid 2. They had to compete against one another. Then Chaos Theory and Snake Eater, the biggest competition between stealth games in the history of ever, and still goes on. Then you had Double Agent and Metal Gear Solid 4. And while both games weren't bad and took their plots both to the next level, as Double Agent was more personal, there's also the fact that there are different copies of each game that are different from one another, that play differently, and the story even plays out differently and such. But it took a more personal route, and Metal Gear also took started going a personal route with Solid Snake and his vastly accelerating age, and how he's dealing with that, the stuff going on with Ocelot and Big Boss and such, the wrap up of that stuff. There's a lot that was going on in that plot. And when wondering if something for the audio that I can turn off. Yeah, it says music level. It's not on. It's weird. Alright, there we go. There. Shut up, radio. Hopefully I don't get copyrighted for any of that. But I think that both series have very strong, strong points to them that keep them going. And then Blacklist, because they changed the actor, and even 5, there's Peace Walker, Splinter Cell Essentials, even though it's not so essential, you don't really need it. There was a lot more competition each time, but Metal Gear Solid 5 was like the last one to really compete, and then after that Splinter Cell was dormant, and Metal Gear was Metal Gear was sadly Survive. um, so it was just sad to see like what's happened, but I do think that Splinter Cell has a chance of coming back. Metal Gear, I'm not certain. I'm sure under the right hands it could, but it will never be the same. It will never have the same touch to it that Hideo Kojima gave the series, the unique flair, everything that it had. It just won't have that type of personality. And my friend was talking to me, he finds that Metal Gear Solid's world is more interests him more and is more unique. And I can see another reason why he'd get into Metal Gear more. And that's due to like the age of the controls. The controls of Metal Gear feel more like a older video game, even up to 4. Where in Splinter Cell it feels like a more modern game, even though it's not a modern game. It was actually still pretty old up to the first Splinter Cell. And it's soon going to be its 20th anniversary in either 22 year of 2021 or 2022, because I believe the first game came out 2002, and Splinter Cell was actually going to come out as a cyberpunk stealth game, but came out as what it was with Michael Ironside as the leading man, and he gave a unique and very personal touch to Sam Fisher, and why Sam Fisher stands out, both with his looks, his weapons, and the voice actor behind him. Just noticed that his beard is... I need to change how this character looks. But with both series, they have very similar steps they take and how the next one evolves and changes over time. I don't want to run there. Where's a car? I need a car. Excuse me. I need... Oh, okay. Thank you. I need the car, but... now they get to walk to wherever they're going. There's just a lot of games that I see implementing what Splinter Cell has in its control scheme than I do Metal Gear. Even Metal Gear implemented a lot of what Splinter Cell does. And I was hearing stuff about how Metal Gear rewards you for doing stealth. I agree to an extent, where Metal Gear once again touches on that more old-fashioned game where it gives you awesome, like, completionist bonuses and such. Where Cell, the completion bonus is basically, or the reward is the experience, as well as seeing that big 100%, that level on there, as well as completing side objectives, main objectives, all that sort of stuff. Then there's a lot of different routes, as well as ways you can go about each mission. The same for Metal Gear. Here's two other things about Metal Gear. While they're not a bad thing, they might be harmful to the pacing, as well as trying to get used to the gameplay is harder to get used to in a Metal Gear game, at least in my opinion. But I think if you are masterful at it, it is quite an achievement to be a master of the craft of Metal Gear. But that's not to say that Splinter Cell doesn't have that same reward. There's still a lot of cool things you can do in Splinter Cell, similar to what you can do in Metal Gear. A lot of things you can implement. Matter of fact, there are a lot of things that environmental and that you can interact with in Splinter Cell that makes it more believable, more alive in that sense. But Metal Gear has cutscenes it relies on over probably too much sometimes, which is not a bad thing because once again, if you're a big fan of the story and you like the story, it's not an easy game for anybody to jump into, where Splinter Cell is probably something that anybody can jump into, get to know. But it's not everybody's game once again. In a similar fashion, Dark Souls is not a game made for everybody. Isn't going to be everybody's cup of tea. But when it comes to it, I think that the pacing of Metal Gear's cutscenes, as well as putting you in forced action segments sometimes, like I was experiencing in Metal Gear Solid 2, and not being able to get to know the characters, get to be with the characters long enough. And I find that the story of Metal Gear Solid 5 was kind of predictable when thinking about it, because I don't think Big Boss or Solid Snake have a metal arm or a chunk of helicopter in their forehead. So it's kind of obvious it wasn't Snake when you think about it. It's kind of... But other than that, the story can take you out of the experience sometimes, and be a little too long even. I know there's an hour-long cutscene, where Splinter Cells are well-paced and they don't entirely take you out of the experience. You have a good chunk of time, and with how many consoles the Splinter Cell games were on, as well as the use of the hardware at the time, Splinter Cell had aged much better, even in its graphics, lighting, and it uses both sound and lighting to its advantage. And peripheral vision is more believable because, especially if you're in a half-lit, half-dark area and you're hiding in the dark, or you put out lights in whatever way you can, it is understandable that somebody wouldn't see a guy dressed in a black suit that's meant to blend in and be sneaky in the dark, compared to someone in a light blue suit that's not in the dark. And Sam Fisher technically does also have only 2 stealth, like, moving around settings similar to Snake. He doesn't have the prone, but other than that, they're still on the same level for that kind of stuff. It's more which control scheme or stealth do you find you like better, and at the end of the day. Because even with mentioning some of the unrealistic things or the rules that Metal Gear breaks with the stealth, you can still find stuff that you like about it. I find that I enjoy and find Splinter Cell's stealth just on the gameplay alone, but I do like the elements of Metal Gear's stealth too, and they do become more fun and better and rewarding over time. And both are fans of one another. You can clearly see that the guys who make Splinter Cell are fans of Metal Gear. And there are some things that even Metal Gear shows off. They have Altair's outfit as a costume, and Raiden's and Brotherhood as a costume for one another. And that's a Ubisoft product, which, by the way, another Ubisoft product is Splinter Cell. So they must be a fan of each other and acknowledge one another's existence to some extent. I do think that Metal Gear also doesn't entirely age well in the story, but it is the unique perspective of the story that they take. Where Splinter Cell, I think, ages a little bit better in its story and environments. You can't immediately tell what time period Splinter Cell takes place in the same way that Nostalgia Critic mentioned for Terminator 2. Where in Metal Gear Solid, you can tell the time period, and that's what it's purpose to do, but at the same time there are other elements that don't age well. But yeah, there's just way too much to cover in these series. That's why there's like practically 3 longer videos talking about this, and it's something that I found interesting. I wanted to bring back the Versus series as well and take on some harder series. Do I think Splinter Cell is better? I personally like Splinter Cell more, and it's because I'm more into that control scheme, I'm more into that world, and you can find both worlds interesting, because Metal Gear is definitely like that unique kind of world. You got these robots, what's this about, what's going on in this universe, who are these characters? There's still interesting things to it. Those same interesting things can be implemented to Splinter Cell, but Splinter Cell is meant to be more realistic, so in a sense it's more terrifyingly realistic, to the extent that you almost believe these sort of things can actually happen. The way that Tom Clancy tells his stories, and even though this isn't really told from Tom Clancy or even David Michaels, it is still one that feels like it respects that that universe, Tom Clancy's storytelling and such, and it does a fantastic job of it. It even does stuff like Call of Duty. Tom Clancy stuff does stuff that Call of Duty later took on, like, you know how there's civilians in the Crossfire, that one mission Modern Warfare, and the dark, and you have the night vision. Splinter's, a lot of Tom Clancy stuff, like, look at the Rainbow Six Patriots trailer, or look at the fact that there are civilians in the missions where Sam Fisher can either go lethal or non-lethal. He has to be careful who he takes out when he's on his missions. So there are a lot of interesting things brought up to question and such in both series, but they're both unique in how they can attract you to their series and pull you in. Metal Gear isn't a game that everybody can get into story-wise or even gameplay-wise, but where Splinter Cell can, but it does have a more attractive, unique world that people want to be pulled into. But Splinter Cell is not something to be reckoned with either, because people can still equally find Splinter Cell a very unique series in its storytelling and its character development and such. It still does a really good job of building that up, feeling scarily realistic at times, and just loving how it all plays out in the end. Even if there are stuff that are typical of them, and both series have their typical heartbeat moments. You got stuff, the cinematic stuff in Metal Gear where they'll do the slow motion stuff, and you just think to yourself, oh, he took some lessons from Zack Snyder. No, but just joking around aside, there are parts that you can tell that they both do that don't entirely age well, whether it be in the story or how they play out the stories, like cinematics and such. But once again, it's very hard choosing between these series. I'm more of a Splinter Cell guy, but I do really like Metal Gear, and it is a very interesting subject to talk about each time. So I don't know who truly wins. I think they both win because they while I chose Splinter Cell, I think they both win because it is good to have them both there. They keep each other going to become better than the other. As competition, it's the same thing for Resident Evil and Splinter Cell. I think they both win. Or, not Resident Evil and Splinter Cell, what am I saying? Silent Hill. Or Xbox and Sony. Microsoft and Sony with Xbox and PlayStation. I'm messing up my words here and there. I'm sorry for that. But, yeah, it's just really interesting to see how this stuff plays out and the history of both these series. The reason I didn't go into the story too when I was doing my videos on these two series is that there's just way too much to cover. There was already enough with the gameplay and other elements to the game, such as their mechanics and such, and how they approach stealth, like what I'm talking about here. Man, there's a lot to go into. I think it's easier to jump into Splinter Cell's story and jump into mainly any Splinter Cell because you don't necessarily need the story to connect to the other to know what's going on, similar to Kingdom Hearts, which is ridiculous. And not every Metal Gear game or like Kojima game ages very well. Look at Death Stranding, for example, where the game was kind of had a theme of like you have to be more social, go outside more, that kind of crap. Connect. America needs to connect, such, and they do it in a kind of digital way too. That part ages well, but the rest of it doesn't, especially since it immediately falls at its face after the pandemic hit. Then it was like, nope, social distance. Instantly, like, threw apart Death Stranding's messaging and such. And it's a similar thing with the Metal Gear. Metal Gear's stories, while they're meant to not be super realistic and even play homage to like 80s films and such, they are also don't age well with their stories in terms of real life, if you were to put them to that.
You made it. I'd like you to meet my team. Or what's left of them.
I'm sorry.
The unit had hunted them down using an advanced surveillance drone. A drone built with tech given to them by that engineer, Daniel.
This is not Bowman's fault.
Of course it is. Her and CIA. They've been protecting that weasel while he leaks tech that gets our men killed. Good men. I'm sending these boys home for the last time, but I'm not leaving Bolivia until someone pays.
This whole situation blows. But before we start handing out payback, let's see what the hell this meeting is about.
Hey, is he following me? Yep, he's following me. Now there's a helicopter here. The only good way of getting around this boring-ass open world. Yeah, technically, like, you can do a lot of the stuff that Splinter Cell is known for in stuff like Ghost Recon. But I don't think... I think there's a certain touch to Splinter Cell that's better. There is one thing, if I had to say, I think that the AIs are more realistically react to you still, and even in Blacklist, but the one thing I have a little nitpick with the later Metal Gears, or Splinter Cell, sorry, that really isn't a problem, because I still really enjoy the gameplay experience itself. Okay, we're leaving without you. Bye, Assassin's Creed.
How the hell are we supposed to find the right one in all this?
Oh, he came with me anyway.
Think I just let that engineer go without being able to find him again?
But,
on his ass. Did it before I handed him off.
But there's just something about the movement of the character that doesn't feel right. There's something off about it that I don't think is as smooth as Splinter Cell. Like, say you turn with Sam Fisher in Chaos Theory, your character kind of smoothly is able to turn, and slower. It's slow, but it feels... It still feels smooth for that experience. Your character kind of just jolts to one side when you turn them. It's harder to turn them because of the angle they go at. It's just weird to explain. I still love both games, but yeah.
Looks like they've got the area surrounded. This could be an ambush. Bowman might be in trouble.
I'm picking up a signal from the tracker. It's coming from my house. It's over there.
Right smack in the middle of those Unidad soldiers. We have to get moving. Got another tango. Got eyes on the tango. He's got a lot of background. I got another. That's 5.
Got it, moving.
I need a better position.
Got the target.
Wait, one. Let me get in position. Target acquired. Standing by. Ready to engage.
Let's shoot this guy.
We got civilians dangerously close. Check your targets.
Tango down.
You're gonna get made. Hang back. Fucker knows somebody's got. Back it up. They're gonna see you. I think they found their pal.
Bowman ain't here.
But Daniel sure looks cozy with those culeros.
Think this is trouble for Bowman?
Sure shit ain't good news.
Oh, shit!
Son of a bitch. Alright, asshole. You've got one chance to get this next question right. Where is Bowman?
Where is Karen Bowman?
Oh, unidad took her. I sold her out to them. Lo siento. I had no choice. They would never let me leave the country without her. Por favor, I just want to be with my family.
Where did they take her?
MOB Jaguar in Flor de Oro. Please.
I don't like the way
I have no
Walker's
choice.
looking at
I'm
him.
not meant for this kind of thing. I'm just an engineer.
Mind if I step in?
He's all yours. He was an American.
Yeah, that's right.
That looked kind of.
He sold out his country. Now we need to find
That looked
Bowman
kind of
before his
bad.
death breaks her.
You're concerned about Bowman now.
I don't give a shit about Bowman. I care about protecting the information in her head. She knows about my family. She know about yours? See, that's the kind of information Santa Blanca likes to use. You know what I mean.
Let's go.
Okay, what? This is where I landed the helicopter? See you later, suckers. Yeah, that's pretty much all I had to talk about with Metal Gear Solid and Splinter Cell.
Bowman and the CIA been playing a dangerous game. Been doing
So remember to like, share, and subscribe. Being detected. What the hell am I being detected by? Oh crap!
And we can hear what she has to say for herself.
Goddamn missiles! There we go. Let's land it right here. Oh, god damn it. Hopefully there's a helicopter here. But with that, I'd like to you to add your thoughts or what feelings about both what you think they both add or subtract, whether it be from themselves or one another.
The base is massive. Finding Bowman's gonna be difficult. Don't suppose
So
you put a trap
remember
on
to
her,
like,
too?
share, and subscribe. Leave your comments below, and I will see you guys next time. If there's more you can add, or that I could add to the series, I will do so in the future. But I keep finding different things to talk about, and there's a lot of interesting things that I like bringing up about both series. So I'll see you guys next time. Bye, and have an awesome day.